Hello everybody and welcome to Chop and Brew. I am Chip Walton. In this episode, an international collaborative brew concept as we look at a Swedish beer called Svagdricka, a very English mild-like beer, low gravity, that has intrigued me for quite some time. First, we visit with Swedish homebrewer turned pro brewer Mikael Holmlund for some historical perspective and to learn a bit about his experiences drinking and brewing Svagdricka in his native Sweden. Then we're off to my home brewery for a brew in a bag batch of Svagdricka, a beer which was then served at my friend Cody's holiday party. Cody and I were able to escape to the basement to deliver some tasting notes to wrap up the episode. One quick note throughout the episode, I mistakenly call Svagdricka Svagdricka. I kind of combined Svagdricka and Gottslandricka and I meshed it into a brand new thing. But it is Svagdricka without the extra S in the middle. So I'm aware of the error. Please don't flame me in the comment sections below. After you watch the episode, if you want to learn more from Mikael Holmlund, during the little interview segment at Don O's, we left a lot of the Svagdricka part in this episode, but what I omitted and put into a Lanyap video is a discussion about Swedish homebrewing, Swedish homebrewing culture, Mikael's setup, and then what it's been like kind of stepping up to opening a craft brewery in a renovated historical firehouse, fire tower, fire station in Sweden. Very cool, and he also drops a couple more nuggets on the process of Svagdricka that I chose to leave out of here for the sake of time. So check out that Lanyap, the link will be underneath this video. Again, if you're getting a lot of education, entertainment, and information from Chop and Brew, please support the show either by buying merch or make a financial donation at chopandbrew.com. Having a really good time doing this. We want 2017 to be an epic year where we blow the doors off this thing a little bit. So yeah, without further ado, let's get our Swedish brew on with Chop and Brew Svagdricka. Not Svagsdricka. Dummy. So what's going on, everybody? We're here in Don Osborne's backyard. Don O's inside fretting and foiling over a brew. I am here with
Mikael Holmlund
from
Bergslagens Brygghus from Dalarna.
Sweden.
Yeah.
He left that out. You act like everybody knows where. Oh yeah, it's just a little south.
Yeah, of course.
And he's a home brewer and a craft brewer from Sweden. He's a fan of Brewing TV back in the day and Chop and Brew these days. He visits Minneapolis every 3 years or so, and we had big intentions of doing a brew day with him, but it's boiled down to drinking a lot of beer and watching Don Osborne brew and sweat in his basement. So I want to step outside real quick, talk with him real quick, and he's going to kind of influence us on an indigenous Swedish beer that we're hoping to brew. Svagdricka, small beer.
Yeah. It's about a 2% beer.
2% beer. It was for, you said minors.
Yeah.
Not minors as in under 18 years old. Minors as in people that bust their ass all day in a mine.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost like the
the Svagdricka was more for when you worked out on the field.
Okay, farmhand beer.
Yeah, farmhand, and then you would bring it out and people could have something refreshing to drink without get really hammered.
It'd be like a lunch beer?
Yeah.
Or even like an all day?
Yeah, like a table beer. What I found out when I've been doing the research is that it was something that kind of like a farmhouse ale or a English mild that you would have on tap basically the whole year around, but mostly when you went in the summertime when you had doing the slaughter and taking your harvest in, then you would bring a really large keg of it out for the workers to drink, and it was something that fermented really fast. It usually ferments in just a few days.
Yeah.
And you drink it really fresh, and it's something like about 2%. I remember my grandfather and my grandmother had always a really big jug of Svagdricka at home, and it has this pressure release cap.
Okay.
So they just to keep the carbonation, they would go every other day and put a small piece of sugar in there to keep the carbonation going.
So it's almost like a continuous fermentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though it's such a small
Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah,
So that's to say the beginning yeast is probably pretty low,
yeah.
and then you're kind of spot feeding it.
Yeah, yeah. So you make the main fermentation and then you spot feed it.
And then they bottle it? Do they keg it? How do
No,
they
no.
serve it?
Yeah, today you can buy it at grocery stores and then it's bottled.
Mhm.
But when I grew up, it was always in these really large containers. You can have like 2
With
liters.
like a spigot?
No, you just poured it.
Okay, so it was packaged in a very large bottle.
Yeah,
Okay, or a jug,
yeah,
and then shared.
yeah.
You know, I've looked around the American internet, and I've found a couple of Americans who suggest one way, and then I've found people clearly with Swedish blog posts or post forums that needed translating, and they've had their idea. Do you know what the basic recipe should look like? It looks like a little pills, a little dark.
I use Pilsner malt, caramel malt, and then I use the carafa and more lighter chocolate malt. And that, as you tasted, turned out quite well. So
Yeah. What kind of yeast do you suggest? I saw English, Irish, and Ringwood. But
yeah, but I talked to the brewer, and then they use a lager yeast. So I actually ended up using California lager yeast because then I could ferment it at a higher temperature and get it going.
But they do a true lager?
Yeah.
They use lager yeast and ferment it lower than
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
you would expect?
Yeah. So
And that keeps it from probably becoming all that beer tasting. I
Yeah.
mean, you're still keeping it clean.
yeah, and I fermented it at 16 centigrade Celsius, and that would be like maybe 55 Fahrenheit or something like that.
With the Cali Common
Yeah,
strain.
yeah. And I made the primary fermentation. I only made for 1 day in the bucket, and then I transferred it over to the container.
Out of fear that it would get too dry, it would ferment too
No,
much,
no,
or it
no,
was just
no.
done?
No, just because that's the way they seem to do it. At I was talking to this brewer who has a small Svagdricka brewery, and he said ferment it like just see it start fermenting, and then they transfer it over to the container with a pressure release cap.
From the ones that you've had commercially, historically, and then the one you made, kind of what is the tasting note range we're going for here? We're looking for something that's what?
I think you could compare it kind of like to English mild, kind of that. It's going to be a bit sweet, but really easy drinking, and it's more like an English mild.
Yeah, I kind of thought of it as like a table porter,
Yeah.
like a small porter when we had it. But it had a cola-ness to it, which is very coincidental considering that it seems like once you add that back sweetener on a commercial scale
Yeah.
and bottle it in the bottles that I've seen, you're
Yeah.
essentially trying to pawn it off kind of like it's a cola,
Yeah,
right? Like an adult soda.
yeah. And do you remember that I brought you a soda
Mm-hmm.
that was called Påskmust?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the next thing that they made because they wanted the kids not to drink alcohol.
It's almost like root beer in America
Yeah.
to beer.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll make this like very innocent version of this thing
yeah.
that sooner or later they will get to know.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a really big thing in Sweden at Christmas. They call it julmust, and at Easter they call it's the same thing, but they call it påskmust. And that's the only time in the year when actually all other soft drinks their sales drop, because that's what we drink then to the Christmas food and to Easter food.
And Svagdricka and Godslandricka,
Yeah,
totally different
yeah,
things.
yeah. Because,
Godslandricka is higher alcohol,
Yeah.
it's got the juniper influence.
yeah, and you make it and you use baker's yeast.
Okay, so like
Making
a sati almost.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
A little more primitive.
yeah,
I mean so it sounds like Godslandricka as a concept is centuries older than
Yeah, I would think,
Svagdricka.
yeah, maybe.
Is Svagdricka fairly modern?
No, I think they've been. What I could find when I researched was that it's been around like from the. I mean, English mild is kind of a version of it, so it's been like from the brewed all over Europe in one way or another during the Middle Ages, and the one that they make at in Gotland, that's more a local one that they only make there.
Well, it appeared Dono's done off camera with his brew day, so now we need to go drink more beer with him. So thank you for once again stopping by.
Yeah.
Every 3 years, it's like Haley's comment on a much quicker frequency. We're gonna brew that bad boy, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate your advice and your tips.
Yeah.
You ready to drink more beer, Dono?
You betcha.
So here we are.
Cheers.
The beer is a thing. Welcome to Act 3 Tasting Notes with our friend Cody Myers-Miller. We're in Cody's basement next to his Keyser, which still has the tap list from a party a month ago.
We're a little behind getting to tasting. I apologize. Life with a 2-year-old, that happens sometimes.
So we took this concept, the Swedish beer, and we decided to use it at an actual Swedish themed party. Tell us about the party that this was brewed for and enjoyed at.
Yeah, so I married into a Nordic family, Swedish and Finnish background, and one of the things they've traditionally celebrated is St. Lucia Day, Santa Lucia Day. It is a Nordic party celebrating the life of the martyr, St. Lucia. She is, the short version of the story is she was a noblewoman who gave away her fortune, snuck out at night, feeding and taking care of the poor. And this did not sit well with nobility. She was basically branded as a witch, a heretic, and she was burned for it. You know, like you do for giving away your riches, right?
What a great story.
Just wonderful. It's heartwarming. Of
So
course,
you drag your daughter into it.
well, you know, that's what you do. You bring your family into a nice burning. No, you celebrate the positive aspects of
Right.
that feeding, and it's become a holiday, a winter party, where we make traditional Swedish baked goods. Or I say we, I have nothing to do with it. I buy the things. My lovely wife makes the Swedish baked goods.
Shout out to Linnea.
Yeah, thank you for wonderful years of wonderful food, Linnea. Me being a home brewer, I wanted to add something to it. Baking is not my forte by any means. So we made some beers, and so this is where it ties together here. We made a couple of Swedish beers to pair with it.
I made the Svagdricka, which we're about to taste and tell you about and wrap up this episode, but he also brewed 2 beers over yonder. Tell us about those real quick.
The Nordic beer, the Swedish beer we made, is a Gotlandstricka. A Gotlandstricka is really similar to a Sati. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Satis because they're gaining in popularity. The thing about Sati and Gotlandstricka is they are very similar. They are both kind of traditional home brews. People are doing this in their backyards. There hasn't been traditionally a large commercial market for them. And so it's hard to nail down exactly what makes a Gotlandstricka because if you go to 4 different parts of the country, you're going to get 4 different answers.
Okay.
But if you want to summarize it, it's a Sati with smoked malt. That is kind of what it comes down to.
The one that blew first was the Christmas Wit.
That's right, yeah, I gotta just make a Christmas beer to hand out as gifts and have at the party as well. So we made a wit, that's a pretty straightforward wit, but we used cardamom instead to flavor it. So we've got orange peel and cardamom in there. Took whole cardamom, crushed it, added it pretty much at every phase possible. And so it's got a nice strong cardamom nose and taste to it. So yeah, those are the other beers that we've got here.
Cool, so the Svagdricka, it turned out, I'm guessing, without busting out a calculator, this may be 3.5–4%.
Yeah, I think under 4 definitely.
So the pills, the Care Munich, the chocolate malt, and the carafa, the DH. So what are you getting?
Yeah, I you know, it's session strength, and so I think that definitely comes through. There's no hint of alcohol here anywhere. I think it has some kind of soda-like, some cola-like qualities to it. It's got a malty sweetness, but it's not like a Scottish ale sweetness. It's a little thinner. I think that's where the soda comparison comes in for me. It has a nice chocolatey flavor to it.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it's very mild. It's kind of a thin body. It has that nice malty sweetness to it, but not the thick malty body, you know?
Yeah, if I had to sum it up for someone super quick, I'd call it a table porter. We're basically talking about a dark mild, but it's got that cola, which is obviously why they brew a very low and innocent ABV version and actually sell it as cola to children and adults.
You can get a 1.5% alcohol version of this at IKEA, of all places. Go to their market section and you'll find it.
That's crazy. Yeah. The bitterness, though, keeps you coming back to it, as if the sessionability didn't. It's not sweet. It's like a bitter chocolate biscuit or a bitter chocolate soda where it's just cuts real dry. And it finished, I can't remember 100% right now. It's in the recipe, but 10:09, 10:11, something like that.
Yeah, it is nice and dry, and so as it's kind of evaporating, as you're finishing your drink, you kind of want another sip of it because it's a little on the dry side, and that sweetness, that triggers your brain into thinking, oh, it's sweet, I want more of this. So it's, this is not our first glass. They've gone pretty quick.
You can drink like liters.
Yeah.
And liters. This reminds me of like real ale that you'd get in England, like something like a dark mild that you could literally pretty much drink all day.
Absolutely.
Not like for the sake of binge drinking, but just to keep your head about you as you're enjoying conversation, enjoying pub crawling.
It really feels like a recipe that harkens back from when beer was made because it was safer to drink than water. That was the primary use. The drinking water from the streams was no good because who knows what were in there, and so people were drinking beer for safety. And this feels like a throwback to that kind of recipe, something that you can drink a lot of out of necessity.
Yeah, definitely a good winter beer. I think it went really good at the party because it was kind of the lightest option. Even though it was darker in color, it was still the lightest as far as heavy option. But I would drink this all year round. Maybe not at noon o'clock on 4th of July out in the backyard, but definitely around the fire later that night.
Well, and session beers are overlooked at holiday parties. It's too easy to go straight to the 8-9% and get drunk at your party too fast. Yeah. It's nice to have some sessionable, flavorful beers to go with everything. I think this hits the mark completely.
What do you think for food? Cooking with or cooking for something like this?
Cooking with, maybe not quite as much, just because it is a little on the milder side. I feel like you might lose some of it. It might probably be good for baking. I would use it in any situation that I would use a wort in. So if you want a nice loaf or some funky pizza dough, that might be fun in those. I don't know. You're the cooking expert, though.
I'm really not. Linnea! Linnea, we need an adult! Yeah, it went really good at the party. It was That was a super fun party to have those 3 very different beers, to have these pastries and these treats that I'd never had before. Pickled herring. Shout out to pickled herring. So.
Yeah. Against my will. That's for the hardcore traditionalists. No pickled herring. I would not pair this with pickled herring, but I wouldn't pair anything with pickled herring.
I did. It was awesome. It actually was awesome because that's all sweet and kind of acidic.
Sure.
And then you come and bring this in, and it's kind of like biting a bittersweet chocolate bar to kind of like level that back out.
Sure.
Well,
cool.
There
you go.
Thanks for giving us a reason to brew while you're empty.
Oh, well, here, we'll fix it.
You got to aptly fill so we can appropriately say chop for chop.
Brew for brew.
Boom.
Cheers.
Recipe. chopandbrew.com/recipes. Check out Simon, the co-host, the silent third.
Brewdog.
What up, Simon?
Brewdog.
He was here the whole time. There was also a cat in a litter box.
I'm hoping that audio didn't come through.
I know, he was like...
Yeah, he was doing his thing. He's like, oh, hey, we're hanging out down here.
I thought maybe he was just going to meow.
Y'all want some poop?
He's like, I got you a table porter over here.